Welcome to episode 54 of the G2 on 5G. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 5G. We cover 6 topics in about 15 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week is fellow analyst Anshel Sag. Let's get started with my first topic. So Vodafone Germany announced this week that they established a 5G and a 6G research facility in Dresden, Germany. Can this enable a competitive advantage for Vodafone? I think it can potentially. Our firm, and you participated in this as well, Anshel, I remember about a year and a half ago, we wrote a series of articles on who's leading in 5G at the time. And I pointed out Vodafone as, an up and comer. And certainly when you think about Germany and that market, and you think about the automotive complex, and you think about one of the biggest poster child use cases for 5G being autonomous driving, certainly this could be an advantage for them. And I mean, it's not new. I mean, lots of operators operate, 5G labs. Certainly in the U.S., AT&T and Verizon do, and T-Mobile is beginning to spin up some additional customer experience labs. And certainly the infrastructure providers like Ericsson and Nokia and others do the same thing. But I do think this could provide them a competitive advantage. So I don't know if you caught the news, but do you have any thoughts?
I did not catch the news, but it does make sense. I think this is definitely more of a 6G play.
Mm-hmm.
I think as far as 5G research goes, a lot of that has already been done. So I think it'll most likely be something in release 18 at the very earliest,
Mm-hmm.
which still, isn't even really in movement yet, due to the delays of 17. So I think it will mostly be a 6G play here. And I think it's more of the, Vodafone kind of acknowledging that they should be a little bit more on the forefront of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is they're still part of the, the standards organizations, and they're doing a lot of this, early testing of the 5G. So I think this is probably more geared towards 6G simply because they've already been so deeply involved in 5G.
Yeah, no, that's a great observation. And lots of, there are lots of, organizations that are kicking the tires on 6G. I mean, certainly the 3GPP will set that standard, so it's very early. But I think that's excellent insight that it's likely more 6G focused. But let's move to your first topic this week. You want to talk about Deutsche Telekom and some interoperability testing that they're conducting.
Yeah, so this was a 5G VoNR call. For those who don't know what VoNR is, it's voice over NR, which
Mm-hmm.
is the 5G version of voice over LTE, which is called VoLTE. So this is called VoNR, and what it does is it does voice over 5G NR.
Mm-hmm.
As such, it allows for a standalone 5G network to handle voice and data, because without VoNR, you can't actually do 5G standalone.
Mm-hmm.
You need VoNR, and you need to make sure that there's good interoperability between users who have different 5G devices, as well as different 5G infrastructure. So
Yeah.
what they did was they ran a test using Ericsson 5G core, and then some IMS equipment from Nokia. And then they took two different smartphones, a Galaxy S21 5G and a Xiaomi Mi 11 5G, and did a test call between those two devices, which were both admittedly Snapdragon devices, but they were different chipsets. One was a 780G and one was an 888 5G. So there were different chipsets used there. And it's good because it combines Ericsson, Nokia, Qualcomm, Samsung, and Xiaomi equipment to enable a complete and compliant solution to ensure that things will work as necessary when the 5G standalone transition happens.
Cool. Awesome. Well, let's move to my second topic this week. Ericsson introduced a new private 5G networking kit or bundle. And the question is, can this help simplify, deployments of private networking? This is a subject that, I think that I kind of weigh in on, quite a bit, and have spent time with, lots of other, operators and infrastructure providers as they're sort of considering, how to roll out, private networking. And certainly it's, from my perspective, it's going to be a mix of, municipalities and schools and hospitals that are able to, to lease or purchase their own spectrum through things like CBRS. But then also they're going to be, sort of managed service, as a service, offerings and plays as well. But this isn't new for Ericsson. They've offered kits in the past. I think what this does is it sort of strengthens and broadens their portfolio to be a little more competitive with Nokia. I mean, honestly, from my perspective, when I look at all four of the traditional infrastructure providers, Nokia has had a lead with respect to their focus, within private networking. So I think this actually bolsters, their capabilities and their competitiveness, and certainly by providing turnkey kits, it will make it simpler for enterprises that actually want to do the heavy lifting and deploy, the infrastructure on-prem to do it. So I don't know if you have any thoughts or insights there as well.
I don't have a specific thought, but I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you know approximately how much more quickly this bundle would enable somebody to roll out a private network rather than if they piecemealed the solution?
From my perspective, looking at what Ericsson has put together with with blueprints and that sort of thing, my initial take on it is that this could definitely speed the deployment. And and that last kit that they introduced was nearly 9 or plus months ago. And so certainly there are probably software updates, virtualization updates as well that could speed the agility of the deployment as well. So it definitely looks like it's a refresh to the portfolio. So that's my assumption at first glance for sure. But great question. Let's move to your second topic this week, and you want to talk about a 2.5 gigahertz auction fight between AT&T and Dish.
Yeah, so it's actually AT&T and Dish are opposing T-Mobile from acquiring any more 2.5 gigahertz spectrum, which they currently already have
boatloads of.
Yeah.
Right.
In some markets, they have almost 200 megahertz. So
yeah,
I think the goal here is that others want in, and they want the ability to prevent T-Mobile from acquiring more, simply because they already have so much. But what I find interesting is that it feels like AT&T wants this more than Dish does, just because I feel like AT&T is more likely to want to use the spectrum, while Dish has a history of
sitting on spectrum,
squatting or sitting on spectrum. So
right.
I'm not really sure what the situation is at this point.
Yeah.
But it seems interesting that AT&T and Dish, which are competitors, have teamed up, and I find it interesting that Verizon actually supports T-Mobile's position on this spectrum auction for additional 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. So we'll see what happens. But the thing is that T-Mobile is currently in the position to have all of it. So I'm not really sure what will end up happening. But I think T-Mobile so far has proven that they are being very aggressive with their 2.5 gigahertz rollout, and that it is a core of their network. And it would be very difficult for them to, not want to acquire more or keep what they have.
Right, right. You may remember, because you've got a memory like a steel trap, but there were a lot of concessions that came together when T-Mobile, was in the throes of acquiring Sprint, and there were a lot of things that were, sort of not given, but afforded Dish an opportunity, like like their prepaid business that spun out of Sprint. Now, I do recall also that there were some spectrum assets that had to be, divested, right? Do you recall what those assets were that Dish acquired from that?
I believe those were low band. I want to say
Okay.
those were Sprint.
So not mid band.
No, it wasn't any mid band. I believe
Okay.
it was somewhere in the 800 megahertz range, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
It might have even been some like 1700 or something, but for the
Yeah.
most part, I believe it was in the 800 megahertz band,
Okay.
because T-Mobile already has a bunch in the 7 and 600, so they don't really
Right.
need to have 800.
Yeah.
But it also was designed to give Dish the coverage that they would need to have a nationwide network,
Yeah.
which they are still in the process of building.
They are, and they're claiming they'll be the first to build a cloud native, fully virtualized, network. And so, and lots of people are helping them with that. The hyperscalers, the infrastructure providers, even the Cisco's of the world as well. And Cisco participated with Rakuten in helping them build out their highly virtualized cloud native network in Japan. So we'll keep tabs on that and report back. Let's hit my third and final topic this week, and I found this really interesting. So BT in Europe is trialing the use of a new fiber optic cable in the hopes that that'll improve its 5G network performance. Is this claim full of hot air? And that's a little bit of a pun, because this fiber is called hollow core fiber, and it's actually has an air pocket, built into the fiber cable. And again, it's just beginning to be trialed right now by BT, but the belief is that this new type of fiber cable can improve performance and actually enhance and reduce latency as well. And obviously, the benefits for that are immense when you start looking at some of the very disruptive 5G services that we expect. But I don't know if you caught this, but what do you think about that? Are they full of hot air?
I did not hear about this, but it sounds interesting. I guess
Yeah,
my question is, does it improve or hinder the rigidity of the fiber?
good
Um,
point.
I think that would be an interesting thing to figure out. But
Yeah,
fiber optics are no joke. It's very complicated technology,
yeah.
and I know it's a very expensive one to deploy, mostly because of the digging.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm always excited to see, what can improve fiber optic performance for 5G and other telecommunications, but especially 5G.
Yeah, yeah. I don't profess to be an expert. I know enough to be dangerous with transport networks and optical, and spend plenty of time with leaders in that space like Nokia and Cisco. But yeah, this will be interesting to see how this trial rolls out, and as things update, I'll bring that back into the podcast. But let's go hit your third and final topic this week, and you want to talk about Italy and Malaysia, and they're set to, and I read this as well. That they're set to deploy Huawei with some restrictions, right?
Yeah, so what I saw is that um, they are going to be, Huawei will be approved to be a vendor for 5G in Malaysia and Italy.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like in Malaysia, there are no restrictions.
Okay.
The government officials said that they didn't see any reason for concern or any security vulnerabilities that they were concerned about.
Yeah.
However, the Italian government did put some restrictions on Huawei, stating that they need to meet a high security threshold, and that they will, be monitored a little bit more closely. But this is good news for Huawei because it's been a lot of bad news for them
Yeah.
this year. And we'll see which operators end up deploying with Huawei equipment. But there are some bright spots in Huawei's 5G rollout
Mm-hmm.
in countries that are well known to have fairly good 5G networks. So
Yeah.
we'll see who uses it, but this is just a nice little bit of good news for Huawei in terms of being able to actually get some governments to approve their network
Yeah.
infrastructure.
They've invested quite a bit in these cybersecurity transparency centers. They have one in Brussels. They have one in Shenzhen, where their corporate headquarters are located. So they're trying to do all the right things and be transparent about it. I'm not surprised to see a country like Malaysia, roll the dice, because just of the kind of the economic characteristics of that country. It's very agrarian, and certainly that they would invite lower cost infrastructure. And to your point, Huawei has proven to be pretty resilient and very high quality in their various deployments. Italy did surprise me, because I really thought that as a core part of the EU, that they would follow suit with what we're seeing in the United Kingdom and other parts of Europe. But I mean, do you think this could be a domino effect for Huawei if they're successful in these two geographies? Do you think this could open up more opportunity for them?
I think it might. I also think it'll ultimately come down to what the geopolitical situation turns into.
Sure.
I think ultimately a lot of this boils down to geopolitical alliances. Because I think if the U.S. government wasn't pushing this, I think a lot of countries wouldn't have sought it.
Sure.
But I do think that if Italy does deploy it, it will be interesting to see what other countries could follow in Europe. So I think there is some validity in your statement that there could be other dominoes to fall after this.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, buddy, another great episode this week. Why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like to provide insights on a specific 5G podcast for a future week, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Will Town Tech, and I'm at Anshel Sag. We hope you have a great weekend, and please tune in again next week.